I don't know exactly what everyone else is hearing, but what I hear now is daily sounds of people passing by the quay. Some playing with a ball, now almost dropping into the water. We're standing at a pontoon in the Ij River, close to my home, but also connected to two of the venues that I did these exercises on water with. And this was past January, but also I think 2 or 3 years ago already in Tolhuistuin. That was actually where we finalized the assessment that I did with the Rietveld students, all on drawing water. As we know, water is liquid and goes everywhere. And when water enters the city, it very often is directly bordered with constructions man-made to not let go of the water and to be like the boss of the water. And very often this is the case in the Netherlands, of course, is that we try to make borders for the water in order to control it. This is a very Dutch method of dealing with water, which is of course very logical since it's also such a threat very often. But over the last years, really after I think driving along the Mississippi River when I was living in America for a year, and when this river was flooded entirely, I was thinking that we can also think about water in a different way, or to more or less like move with the water more, and not only try to fight the water, but to understand its movement and somewhat dance with the water more than we tend to not do. And this idea struck me when I saw these maps made by Fisk, which was more or less like an engineer making all these maps for the government, trying to understand how, like what the Mississippi River does. And when you see this map, you see all these layers of how the water went, like almost like a snake on top of the land. So it moved all the time. And then I had to think that what is so interesting about water is, of course, that it is liquid and that it is dynamic, that it changes over time. It has all these elements that is completely opposite to what drawing is like. And especially when you make maps or when you are in cartography, you start drawing these things that are most present or like most obvious. And water is the least, I think. And this, I think, is part of why we are struggling with water so much, because there is this weird contradiction between trying to catch water that has all these elements in itself that makes it impossible to do so. Not only in width, also in height, in thickness, like there's water in us, there's water around us, there is 100% water under us. All these levels of water are with us all the time, but it's really hard to capture. And this is why I decided to make this brief for the students at the Rietveld to see how we can draw water in a different way in order to understand it better, and in order to grasp it better, and in order to listen also better. And very often we also overlook water, like we draw big blue areas and say this is water. And this is how we also started to our research with going to the archives and studying all these cartography maps and see how in the past the sea was drawn and also the rivers were drawn, and they were just lines and solid blocks or stains on the map, whereas like every single square millimeter is been drawn when it comes to land. When it comes to water, it's not the case. So this was the starting point of the brief that we did with the Rietveld students. The brief was not so much to draw a map precisely, but to draw water in a as free as they could think about. So there were very broad end results. There was this one lady who did a study on how also people should become more of a hybrid between fish and human. So they studied all these elements of the human body and how you can transform them into a being that is as comfortable in water as on land. And she made a 1-to-1 drawing of this human being from all sides. But there was another more pragmatic research on just trying to use all your senses and to observe what you see and draw the water. There was one student who, for the exhibition, hung this absorption sponge somewhat on top of the roof and catching all the water within the space itself, and it dripped on the panel on the ground, and that formed his final drawing. You started to understand, indeed, water is everywhere, right here already. There was a very fantastic book made that was about the motion of swimming, and this was this flip-over book that you could go into and flip through the water. So you had to make a motion in a form of swimming. So that was great as well. Vera made this more of a text, a very poetic text on how water came from the sky, then fell on her shoulder, dripped along her body onto her toe, and she inscribed this small text into a copper plate and dripped some water over it. So over time, this copper became completely brown during the weekend, and the letters that she inscribed became hard to read after this weekend, and that actually went very quickly, and that was a really beautiful work as well. What the students told me, much more than how I understood drawing water, is to not only look into maps but to think about it more three-dimensionally. So this is how I very often now am very aware of the fact that also the water is connecting us, like the three of us standing here right now as a body of water, but then even like the water that is in between us, under us. So there is this a connector between us. This is how I think I would describe it now. Water is being so present all the time, being so ubiquitous that you very often overlook it, but it is... what was this book again? That this fish that was swimming in the sea and that hardly noticed the water. I think, the same goes with us, with air and water. Also because it is dynamic and it is going everywhere all the time. You overlook it, and I think especially when you start drawing things, you start to focus on things that you often overlook. You might be familiar with this phrase, the medium is the message. Is that I think in this very simple brief of drawing water lies already this contradiction of course, making something that is dynamic, moving over time, static. And I do think that now that we are finding new ways of representation and using also digital ways of mapping and these kind of things, I do think and believe that we can also understand water in a different way by doing so, and by using different techniques that includes time. I think will at least give us something to understand the water like one dimension better than we used to. This is at least what I am looking forward to, starting to see more 4-dimensional or 6-dimensional maps, and to include these dimensions as well in order to already start to get to know the water a bit better.